How's it going, people? It's your boy Veedu Vidz, and I am joined by, once again, Hassan Radwan. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
And today we've got a very special treat for you. We are going to go through the claim that many Muslims make that Isaiah 42 is a prophecy and it refers to Muhammad, that this is a foretelling of Muhammad who will come and the message of Islam. We thought the last prophecy video we made was quite popular, so we thought we'll do one more. And with us we have Hassan Radwan, who will go through Isaiah and explain what it says and what it could possibly mean. So
okay.
I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, right. Well, it's quite a long chapter, Isaiah 42. I won't read all of it. We'll just go through the relevant parts. But
Sure.
Let me just read the opening one of the important sections, which is, "Here is my servant, whom I uphold, my chosen one, in whom I delight. I will put my spirit on him, and he will bring justice to the nations. He will not shout or cry out, or raise his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break, a smouldering wick he will not snuff out. In faithfulness he will bring forth justice. He will not falter nor be discouraged until he establishes justice on earth."
Right.
So just to begin with, the basic and most fundamental test for any prophecy is, can it only mean what is being claimed? Or are there other possible meanings?
Okay.
So, and another point is that, do these prophecies stand alone, or are they dependent on another belief, a pre-existing belief? Clearly, these prophecies depend on a pre-existing belief that the Bible is corrupt and Islam is the criterion by which to decide which is right, what part is right and wrong. For example, the Bible verses, that contradict Islam. There are Bible verses that contradict Islam. For example, the Quran blames someone called a Samiri for the calf worshipping incident. When Moses went up to the mount and they started worshipping. But the Bible blames Aaron. So they contradict each other. So if a verse that coincides with Islam proves Islam is true, then why can't a verse that contradicts Islam prove Islam false?
Yeah, 100%. I agree, yeah.
But you see, Muslims will say, that's because that part is corrupt. Well, how do you know it's corrupt? Well, because it contradicts Islam.
Right.
Well, this is circular reasoning. So basically they're saying Islam is true because it matches this passage in the Bible. How do you know that passage is true? Because it matches Islam.
Yeah.
And after all, Islam is true because it matches this passage in the Bible.
Exactly.
And so on.
So there's no independent way of verifying this. It's just simply Islam said it's true, therefore it's true. And if it's false, because it goes against the Quran.
I mean, they can't stand alone. It depends on, as I say, a pre-existing belief in Islam. So to the claims, the Christians claim that these verses refer to Jesus. Muslims say these verses refer to Muhammad. Jews have a couple of views. One, it's the Bani Israel as the whole nation, and another is that it is the Messiah yet to come, the Jewish Messiah. I should also add that our view as atheists and agnostics is that these are simply man-made narratives with no divine significance.
Yeah.
The first thing that actually stood out was this part, which said, "He will not falter nor be discouraged until he establishes justice on earth."
Right.
Well, clearly no one has established justice on earth, so this hasn't been fulfilled. Neither Jesus nor Muhammad nor the Bani Israel. Perhaps the view that it's the Messiah yet to come is arguably, the best fit, but that's only because it
hasn't happened.
It can't be verified yet. The second thing that occurred to me was, why can't God just say clearly what he wants to say? I mean, this comes again and again in all the prophecies. Why, if he means Muhammad is going to come in 1,000 years' time in Mecca, why not say a prophet will come, his name will be Muhammad in 1,000 years' time in Mecca? I mean, is that a difficult thing to say?
Yeah.
I've always thought that even when I was a Muslim, I never took much interest in these prophecy claims because I thought they were insulting to God. Because if there is a God, then he's better than that. He, if he wanted to give a clear message, if he wanted to give a prophecy, if he wanted to say something, he would do it.
Yeah.
This kind of vague, ambiguous language,
Sherlock Holmes detective work.
It depicts God as being incompetent.
I agree. And a very bad communicator.
A lesser God, and that's not the sort of God I could believe in. And I do. I mean, I actually do believe in that there is something, but not this. Not this. Another thing that jumped out to me is this passage, which doesn't sound like a good description of Muhammad to me. And I'm saying this even from a Muslim point of view. It says, "He will not shout or cry out, or raise his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break, a smouldering wick he will not snuff out." Now, as I say, even from a Muslim perspective, Muhammad was not a pacifist.
Yeah.
So this doesn't seem to be a good description.
I mean, this gives the image of someone like completely zen, or like
Absolutely.
not even,
exactly. He's not going to break even a little, twig or well, I mean,
that's not.
It's just simply that's not a good description of Muhammad.
Yeah.
And I don't mean this,
as an insult
in a derogatory way.
Yeah.
I mean from a Muslim perspective.
Yeah.
So let's go and look at the actual claims.
So I've got a couple of questions here, and I'm gonna put these to you because
Sure.
There are some questions that a lot of Muslims will have regarding Isaiah, which are valid questions. So, for example, when it says in the verse that my servant. Now, clearly, my servant in Arabic is, Abdullah, or servant is,
Abd.
Abd, and Abdullah, the servant of God. And this is clearly referring to Muhammad. So what do you have to say regarding that?
Well, again, I go back to that thing that can this only mean what is claimed? Well, yes, Muhammad is Abd, but, actually the term chosen one in the Torah is used throughout Isaiah, and it refers to the Bani Israel. For example, in 49:3, it says, "You are my servant, Israel, in whom I will display my splendor." So clearly it's referring to the nation of Israel, the Bani Israel as a whole. Plus, of course, Abd is used for any faithful believer, and Jesus is called Abd, Abdullah as well, the servant. And even Khidr, who's not regarded as a prophet by many, is called a servant of God. So, I mean...
So it's not specific.
It's not specific. So, again, I repeat that for a prophecy to be proven, there cannot be any other meaning other than the one it's claimed. Is Muhammad the only possible meaning for my servant? Clearly no.
Right. Okay, so the next question is, it says, my chosen one. This refers to Muhammad, who's also called Al-Mustafa.
Al-Mustafa,
the chosen one. So, I mean, fair enough, you're saying the servant, but what about if it's also my chosen one?
Okay, well, again, and this is going to be repeated again and again, and unsurprisingly, the Torah is talking about the Bani Israel. It should come as no surprise. So this term in the Old Testament is used to refer to the Bani Israel, who were literally God's chosen people, and that's confirmed in the Quran as well. And for example, this term is used in Psalm 89:3, "A covenant with my chosen,
right, I
have sworn." And in Psalm 105:6, "O sons of Jacob," and Jacob is referred to is the Bani Israel, "his chosen." And in Isaiah 45, "And Israel, my chosen one." And Isaiah 49:7, "The Holy One," and the Holy One means God, by the way, "the Holy One of Israel, who has chosen you." So, yeah, I mean, it's clearly referring to the Bani Israel. Plus, Arabic and Hebrew are related, which a lot of people know. A lot of words are similar, and they share a lot of the roots, the same root. But actually, the Hebrew word for chosen in this is Bachir or Bachiri, and it's not related to the word istafa. It's actually usually translated as Mukhtar. So, it's not even an exact equivalent of Mustafa.
Okay, so what about when it says "whom I delight," meaning the beloved of God, Habibullah, which many Muslims refer to as Muhammad? He's the Habibullah. He is the beloved of God.
Habibullah, yes. Well, definitely we Muslims. We
got ya.
Muslims.
Got ya, mate.
No, I've been discovered. I'm an undercover Muslim.
Takiya.
Well, that's what a lot of people say about me. Funnily enough.
Yeah.
Muslims say Habibullah. And Habib means beloved. And there is a word in Hebrew which is actually Haviv or Shaviv, which is from the same root. Because, as I say, Arabic and Hebrew are connected. But the word used here is not Haviv, or it's not Habib. The word used is Ratsa Nefesh, and they have a direct equivalent in Arabic, which is Rada. Have you heard of the name Reza?
Raza, yeah.
Raza.
Yeah, Raza.
You
In
say-
Pakistan,
you say-
India, yeah.
In
Radha.
Pakistan, you say Raza. Well, this is Ratsa. It's from Radha. It's my surname, Radwan. And we say radiyallahu anhu.
I see.
Is Radia. So it's the same word. And nefesh
Right.
is nefs.
Wow.
So it's basically saying rida nefsi, yarda nefsi.
What does that mean, though?
It means pleasing to my soul. Yarda nefsi.
So you're connected.
Rida nefsi.
You're connected.
Yeah.
So this is it. This is the Illuminati triangle. You're in the middle of it. Okay.
Actually, Radwan is one of the angel that guards the gates to paradise. So,
Oh.
So yeah, I mean, actually, and radiyallahu anhu is a term we use for
Companions,
the companions.
Yeah. Oh.
It's actually not a term we use for Muhammad. So not only is this not Habibullah, but it's specifically not a term that we would use normally for Muhammad.
Yeah. Wow.
And again, unsurprisingly, pleasing to my soul is simply a term used for Bani Israel, and which has been the case from the start.
Yeah, it's an amazing coincidence that the Bani Israel keeps coming up in all the prophecies. I mean, it's amazing that the Jewish God is speaking to the Jews.
I mean,
I didn't think that would happen.
I think that I think both Christians and Muslims, far be it for me to advise them, but I think concentrate on your own books and give dawah from your own books, because I think looking into other people's books, it's a weakness, just as when some people look at Christians look at the Quran to try and prove Jesus. It's not the best way to do things.
Yeah.
And to give you another example from Psalms 194:4, it says, "For the Lord take pleasure, ratsa, radin, in his people." So it's clearly referring to the Bani Israel.
Fair enough. Okay, you've managed to deal with that one just about. Just about. So what about when it says, "I will put my spirit on him"? This means God will send his revelation to Muhammad, i.e., he's imbuing him with his spirit, his ruh, which is used in the Quran as revelation. So this is saying that God is revealing to Muhammad. What do you have to say about that?
Ruh is used in the Quran to refer to revelation in a couple of places. It's not the most obvious word. There are lots of other words that spring to mind. But the use of ruh it's a strange word, ruh, because it refers to lots of things. Sometimes it's the angel Gabriel bringing revelation. Sometimes it's Gabriel bringing news of a baby to Maryam, or bringing the annual decrees on Laylatul Qadr. Sometimes it's called the Holy Ruh, Ruh al-Qudus, and it seems to be something mysterious that supported Jesus. Other times it's something blown into Adam during man's creation.
Right. That's where I think most Muslims don't from that point. Yeah.
That the Ruh was blown into Adam.
Yeah.
It's also used as the thing that's blown into Maryam, so she can conceive Jesus.
Right.
In fact, the verses about Maryam are very confusing, because it says, فَأَرْسَلْنَا إِلَيْهَا رُوحَنَا فَتَمَثَّلَ لَهَا بَشَرًا سَوِيًّا. So we sent to Maryam our ruh, and our ruh appeared as a human. So presumably this is Gabriel.
Right.
But then it says, فَنَفَخْنَا فِيهِ, in another verse, فَنَفَخْنَا فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِنَا. And this is speaking about Maryam, and fihi is referring to Farj. And it says, we blew into it ruhana, our ruh. So the ruh came and was also blowing the ruh into Maryam. It seems to, it's a mysterious word, and actually some people actually came to the Prophet and asked him about the ruh in the Quran, and it says, you have but little knowledge of it, so it didn't really explain it. So it's kind of a mystery.
So it's a vague sort of...
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest with you, wouldn't it make more sense to use a word that actually means revelation, like wahi?
But that would be too easy. It'd be too easy.
And in Hebrew, wahi, there is an equivalent. As I say, Arabic and Hebrew are very connected. So, I mean, why do these prophecies always have such difficulty in saying what they actually mean? Why does it always require humans to explain what God couldn't?
Yes.
And again, one can only claim prophecy when it is the only meaning possible. If there is a more simple and obvious meaning, then it is not a prophecy. And the more simple and obvious meaning is that it's talking about Bani Israel, which again it has been doing from the start. For example, Ezekiel 39:29 says, "For I shall have poured out my spirit, ruh, upon the house of Israel.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. So what about when it says, let the settlements where Kedar lives rejoice? Now, Kedar was the son of Ismail, and so this refers to Muhammad and the Arabs and Muslims of Hijaz, as Muhammad came from the line of Ismail. So this is a very clear indication, right?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to dispute that Muhammad and the Arabs were related to Kedar. I'm not sure all these characters are really historical characters, but for argument's sake.
Okay.
But the Old Testament is specifically referring to the northern Arabian tribes who had a kingdom in northern Arabia and Transjordan.
Right.
They are known as the Kedarites, or Mamlakat al-Qidar. And the Kedarites were in constant conflict, I think I mentioned in another video,
Yep.
with the Assyrians and the later the Babylonians and the Persians and the Romans. Sometimes they were vassals, sometimes they were in conflict. They're mentioned several times in relation to their neighbours, the Israelites to the west and the powers to the north and the east.
Right.
And this can be seen by looking at other verses, for example, in Jeremiah 49:28, concerning Kedar and the kingdoms of Hazar, which Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, attacked.
Right. Okay.
So this was in 598 BC when King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon attacked the Kedarites and it's obviously in that area in Jordan, what is now called Jordan, and has nothing to do with the Hijaz.
And the obvious thing is that if he wanted to say Mecca or Medina, he could have just said Mecca or Medina or Yathrib. But why say Kedar and?
Well, this is the fundamental. This
Yeah.
is the fundamental flaw for all these prophecies. God never seems to say what he means.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
He wants you to decode it thousands of years later. So, okay, what about the next one where it says, let the people of Selah sing for joy. Let them shout from the mountaintops. And Selah, in this case, would refer to Medina, because there is a mountain outside Medina called Mount Selah. Gotcha.
Well, yeah, gotcha. Well,
Yeah.
well, this is the claim. But actually, Selah is in what is today Jordan. There are two places called Selah in Jordan. One is near Bozrah and one further south known as Petra. Petra comes from Petros, which is the Greek word for rock, and Selah means rock in Hebrew. In fact, Jewish translations often translate this as rock dwellers without identifying it with any particular location. But the Old Testament refers to Selah in more than one place, and it's obvious it's not in Medina. For example, in 2 Kings 14:7, he slew Edom in the Valley of Salt 10,000 and took Selah by war and called the name of it Joktheel unto this day.
Right.
So clearly the Edomites were up in Jordan area as well, and so Selah was one of their towns. So it clearly can't be Medina. Now, what Muslims will say is that, but it's a different Selah. They'll say,
Okay.
it's not that Selah, because it's talking about the Kedarites.
Right.
And they say that the Selah sentence is connected to the previous sentence about the Kedarites,
Right.
which are the Arabs, not the Edomites. And so they say it's a different Selah. But actually, no, that's not the case. They're making an assumption there. On the contrary, the passages are clearly listing different places. It's saying, sing the praises of God from the ends to the earth. Sing the praises of God from the ends of the earth. And then it lists different places. Down to the sea, islands, wildernesses, towns, settlements of Kedar, people of Selah. It's a huge stretch to claim Selah means Medina. I mean, clearly these are all different places. It's a huge stretch to say that sing all the praises from the ends of the earth, all in one place. Mm-hmm. It's obviously speaking about different places.
Okay.
And Medina is obviously far removed from the whole theatre of the Old Testament. And what sense, again, does it make to call Medina by one of the lesser mountains surrounding it? Wouldn't it be easier to actually call it by its name,
Yathrib.
which was Yathrib at the time? Yeah. Is that too difficult?
Yeah.
And Selah is actually one of the smaller. There are several mountains around Medina. It's one of the smaller mountains, and it's not a significant mountain. It's it's not immediately recognisable as the place of Medina.
Yeah.
I should also add that according to Lisan al-Arab, the mountain near Medina is called Selah, with a fatha on the sin and a sukoon on the lam, not Selah as pronounced in the Hebrew Torah. Of course, I suppose some Muslims will say it's been corrupted, but then who gets to decide what's been corrupted and what's not? And this goes back to my point about circular reasoning.
Okay, fair enough. But when it says, sing to the Lord a new song, sing to the Lord a new song. So new song means this is a new law, and we know that the Prophet Muhammad brought new laws. So this is referring to Muhammad.
Right. Well, again, sing a new song doesn't mean bring new laws. It's a phrase used in places in the Old Testament, for example, in the Psalms of David,
Right.
which says in 33:3, sing to him a new song. And in 43, it says, 40/3, he put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. Obviously, David was not bringing new laws.
Right. So this is a very selective understanding of...
Simple as that.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
I mean, as with all these prophecies, it's a matter of reading into it what you want to see. And I go back to, again, is it the only meaning possible?
Yeah. So the next one is, he says, a light for the Gentiles. This is Muhammad because his message was for everyone. Unlike the Jews, their message is only for the Jews. So this is a clear reference to Muhammad.
Okay, right. Well, Gentiles is also pronounced, is also translated as the nations, because the other nations, the Jews regarded the other nations as, the non-Jews, in other words, Gentiles. And it's used several times in Isaiah to refer to the Bani Israel. And although Jews don't seek to convert Gentiles, they have been commanded to be a light for all the Gentiles, for the nations.
Right.
For example, in Isaiah 49:6, my servant to establish the tribe of Jacob and bring back those of Israel, and I shall make you a light unto the Gentiles, the nations, to be my salvation until the end of the earth. Right. And again in 60/3, and unto your light nations shall walk, and kings unto the brightness of your rising. And again, nations as Gentiles. Plus, Jews who say this refers to the Messiah to come say he will be a light to the world.
Right.
And he will establish a justice throughout the land for Jews and non-Jews. And again, of course, being a Messiah claim is something we can't verify yet, but we can't falsify either. So it's
right. Yeah, exactly. It hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
So now, the last one is in Isaiah. It talks about marching out like a champion, like a warrior. He will stir up his zeal. With a shout, he will raise the battle cry and will triumph over his enemies. But those who trust in idols, who say to images, "You are our gods," will be turned back in utter shame. This refers to Muhammad's victory over the pagans. Right?
Well, again, this passage is talking... Actually, this passage is talking about God. So the first part was speaking about a person, but this one is actually speaking about God. And before the part that's been quoted, it actually says, the Lord will march out like a champion, like a warrior. It's saying God will defeat his enemies and deliver his people, the Bani Israel. Obviously, because Jews, Christians or Muslims regard these words as having some divine significance, they believe it must be fulfilled in some way. And each will argue that it fits their own narrative. But from our perspective, we regard these words as just fallible, flawed human words. It's nothing extraordinary for a strictly monotheistic tribe surrounded by pagan enemies on all sides to boast about how their God is going to crush their, these false gods around them. By the way, this section talks about God marching out like a warrior, shouting, raising the battle cry, laying waste to mountains, hills and vegetations. Whereas the earlier section said, my servant who won't shout or raise his voice won't break a reed or snuff out a smouldering wick. It's quite a stretch, to say the least, to say these two passages are speaking about the same person.
Yeah, I was just while I was reading, I was thinking, hang on a second, didn't you just say earlier he was all peaceful and whatever? Now he's smashing everything up and whatever it is. And Muhammad, the Muslims would never refer to Muhammad as the Lord or the God or whatever it is. Yeah. So it's clearly two different people. You can't claim both are the same person when they give very different descriptions within the same thingy. So
I mean, these sort of prophecy claims, I've always found them just it's a weak way of trying to put forward dawah. If you want to put forward dawah, look at the things in Islam rather than trying to selectively,
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I've even
according to your confirmation bias, clearly.
Yeah. I've even seen Zakir Naik do this with Hinduism. He goes to the Hindu books and he starts saying, well, this refers to Muhammad, this refers to so and so. Again, how do you know that part is valid? How do you know that part is real? Why not the other parts? And it's just a bit of a mess, and it's just sort of stretching, really.
I really don't like this sort of polemics. I never liked it when I was a Muslim, and to be honest with you, I never really would have even looked at this had you not asked me to.
Yeah. I got so many requests saying, but you haven't done the prophecies. Well, now we've done quite a few of them, so I would encourage you to... Now this is our third video on the prophecies.
I'm done with it.
We're done with it.
I'm done with this.
I would, be honest with yourself, and the very rigorous method that we have applied, or that you would apply to your own books, apply that to the prophecies that you supposedly believe in. And if you believe in it, fine, fair enough. If you don't, well, that's up to you. So, any last words on that, and then we can hopefully close this book on prophecies. And
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you guys, and we'll see you guys next time.